Welcome. I'm Bill Wake. We're here doing a summary of the work I've been doing on Twitch this last week. I'm working on SortTables, which is a data analysis tool I designed and implemented a couple of years ago when I first started doing Twitch and when I first was doing Swift UI. Both probably show in this. Our work this week was focused on an area where you configure a database. So the tool can either open a CSV file or it can open a SQLite database, which is pretty much a SQL database, but we haven't done the rest of that. At any rate, part of what you do is you try and configure the database. So this section up here is the new section. I'll get to that shortly, but we started with this one. And I think my recollection is this worked before, and probably something in the update process messed it up. So it doesn't work now. So it kind of half works, but the goal was you would take a class, or I'm sorry, a table. In this case, I've got a registration system, so I have classes people can take, people and registrations. You could take this table and say, what fields do I want to see in my columns? And I probably don't want to see an ID, and I probably don't want to see the instructor's foreign key, but the name, instrument, and time slot all sound like things I'd want to know about a class. So with that idea, you could take this and set which fields you wanted to see in the table. Now, I also have the ability to add a table. Oh, now it's working. Oh my gosh, this did not work all week. I don't know what I've done to make it work, unfortunately, but so maybe registration. Well, we don't really need no fields in there to see, but person, we probably want their name, but not their ID. All right, now if I go back, I don't know if I'll see it or not. I do. Oh, this is so weird. At any rate, it was showing up as a bug that it would only show the one instance. Now, we could tell it knew them because there was an error message. Oh, there it went back. Okay. Yeah, so we were seeing this kind of thing like, oh, I've got the two tables, but now it doesn't seem to know about it anymore. And go back here and it does, but it's complaining, it's just off that it should always show the multiple tables that you've selected. Also, it says it. Oh, I probably clicked add table again. I don't know. Yeah, so I'm getting that, but when I configure it, the configuration isn't sticking. Okay, all it's still wrong, but it's just wrong in a different way than I was seeing. I was seeing this all the time, and now it looks like it only has one class because it should complain if there are two classes that aren't joined or two tables that aren't joined. And boy, do I say class for table a lot because I'm so used to classes and objects, but this is a class you would take. All right, at any rate, this wasn't working. So we tried several things to make it work. Let's see. So the the let me go into the code for it. So this set of tables is active tables model. And I didn't, I think I'm still not quite clear on the model for Swift UI, unbelievably at this point, but definitely I wasn't then. And the problem I had was I want to make a model and then I want the model to have other objects beneath it and that are still part of the model. Not everything is going to be a simple type at the level of my models. I want to have, nested structures and things like that. And I could never get that to work directly. I couldn't just say it was observable object because who's going to observe it? So it's really the interplay between active tables model, which is which tables have you selected, and the table view. And it's just I don't know. I ended up trying to make this observable so that somebody could use it and this observable, but the top level view doesn't know about the inner level observable, so something's funny. So I ended up using these cancelables, which is a way to kind of tap into the notification system as you're doing it. Um, I don't know if I can get to. Yeah, I'm not sure I can see anything that's going to directly do it. So I really tackled a couple of ways to try and change things. One is that I think Swift is much happier to have value objects, which it declares with structs. So I tried making my table view model and my active tables model into structs and letting the database view work with those, but it didn't quite work. And I don't know if it just meant I didn't go far enough that every level had to do it, or what was going on. But um, just changing these to structs and hoping that the when they change that would trigger the notification did not work. The second thing I tried was iOS 17 has a new approach to observables. You declare in front of it observable, and then that's kind of a macro that the um, the view system taps into the view system again. You don't have to mark fields published. It just picks up on which fields get modified, and it's a very sophisticated macro, if macro it is, which I think it is. But it can tear into the fields and decide which ones get referenced and all that kind of stuff, and decide which ones have to be notified and take care of that for you. And I haven't done anything with that really. I mean, I watched a video, WWDC video or two about it, but hadn't tried it before. So I tried it here in the middle of some legacy thing that I don't really understand. So it did not work. Again, I was hoping that marking the top level observable might let the whole thing come together. Now, maybe there's some combination of the top level observable and the bottom level structs that I could make work. It feels like it should, but I went after this twice this week. New observable approach, making this a struct. It just didn't retain the updates here. Now, I don't know. Maybe that's not the level that's failing. I can't tell. So I also tried it on Tuesday. Again, trying to struct and observable, and just could not get it there. Um, but okay, look, I'll give up on that. I'm willing to rework this part because I want to change the interface as well. So what I find is this interface of coming in here and marking things, it's okay in the sense that it functions, but it really, you're bouncing back and forth between these things to do it. I thought, let's take a new approach and see if we can I'm trying the struct model here. But the new approach is create some objects that do it. I guess I'm jumping forward, so let me skip that. Let me go back to another thing. The original version of this, you had to type into a box to get the database, and then it would give you a message if it found the database there. So if I type test.d, it's like no database found, and I type B, so I get test.db, and it says, oh, here's your database. It seemed like, gee, you've got a folder of databases, like, let's just look in the folder and see what's there. So the thing we did on Monday that actually moved us forward, other than being a slightly bit smarter, was making it so that this is a drop down. I only have one database in there now, but it does work if there are multiple databases. It can find them. All right, so let's take a look at that. All right, so that boils down to a picker that tracks the current database, and it gets these database names, and they're coming. Let's see, where's database finder? Yeah, when this overall view appears, it goes out and populates the list of database names, and then that's available for the drop down. And we default to the first one in the list. So it's much more selecting what's there rather than wandering around typing it and trying to remember what the database names are and all that. All right, and this is just a loop. It goes to your iOS has a sort of default direct document directory, and we just go through there and look for anybody who ends with either DB or SQLite 3. I don't think I don't know if that's all standardized or not, but we can change it as we learn. But for now, this is adequate. And this matching any, that's an extension. Let's see if it's here. So we started off with a complicated thing inside the database finder, but really this is really a string match. You give me a string, um, and a string that it wants to match, and a list of suffixes, and we walk through and find the strings who have that suffix. So it's purely a string match operation at this level, and so we could make use of it in there. But this thing of selecting instead of remembering and typing, it if you don't remember, I think somewhere I put a debug in here. Um, it's I think it's this. We'll do it. Yeah, I can get the directory in the simulator and then go to that directory in my Mac Finder, and I locate it and isolate it or whatever. Um, but I don't need to. I can just find the ones that are there and use them. That's fine. How you get them there, that's kind of outside the scope of what I'm working on at this point. All right. So that's finding the database. Then the next thing was, well, I kind of repeated my spikes. I tried the struct thing. I tried the observable thing. It didn't work. Okay. Um, Now this, let me go back to this. I wonder if I lost something there because we're in the spikes and outs so much. I don't know. Is it database configure? Hear me? Configure view model. I don't know if somewhere I had. Oh, may have to find things. At any rate, there's a difference between state object and observable object, and I think somewhere I had an observable object that should have been a state. Yeah, maybe it was this one. But putting it in here, that maybe I'm not quite doing what I think I am. At some point, I had a state for one of these that should have been observed object, and I know that one of the changes they made in the last couple of years was to tighten up what that meant, and they meant different things now. So if it worked, it didn't stick. So we tried these two spikes again, and again it didn't stick. Okay, so what I moved to was a new view showing the list of all tables, and that's this one on top here. Sort of like the database, where you had to go select thing, move into a different level and select things. I thought, let's put the tables up top and just list them out. You might not be able to select multiple tables or duplicate a table, but that's a pretty obscure case, so I can live without it, I think. Our first stage was to create this view and then to get the list of tables and put those in. And then we made it more sophisticated to find the list of fields, or the columns, sorry, but find the columns and list those directly in here for you. I tried the Swift UI table. Capital T table is a relatively new object in Swift UI that is supposed to represent tables. And I thought I'd make a hierarchical view because it supports, with the little disclosure triangles, but it doesn't seem to like two different types of things. And this is really table metadata and column metadata, and they are different. So a pure hierarchy, it just sort of assumed you'd have a simple hierarchy of all the same things. And it just didn't feel like it was moving forward. So I, on Wednesday, basically switched it so we just had a list of these, and within there is the list of fields. So database view is the top level view here. There's the picker, and then this section, if we have tables, we have the section for tables. Then this is the all table view. And it really just goes through the database and says, give me your table metadata, which is a list of table metadata. So you have a bunch of tables. The database is going to know what the names of those tables are. Each of those knows the name and then the list of fields or columns. And I've kept those strings. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do for the long term, but at this point, everything is strings. And notice they're all structs. This is something you can put in a struct. This is a struct. Well, an array is implicitly a struct, I guess. But this structure was new. We sort of had the information before. It had already fetched the table names and then had the ability to tell you the columns for it. But instead, I made a more static representation that's like, what's the table, what's the columns? Let's just find that out and track it. So I feel like these fields, these accessors could go away, or at least in implementing them use the table metadata we fetched. But it definitely was a twist on the thing. So rather than separate tables and columns, we put them in one structure. And the one structure is great because that's what we're looking at here. Show one table metadata, well, list the class name and show all these indented. For this one, the table metadata, it takes a list of all tables and then maps them into those table data metadata objects. Not a major change, but I feel like, we probably can simplify some of the rest of this because of that. But this thing showing these things in a simple list, that fits a much simpler UI, and I think we'll see less problems. And it's also, you don't have to bounce inside to change your decision about which fields are visible and so on. All in all, I think that's a good move. And eventually I'll delete this table thing and probably make the joins work more similarly to this, where we put the actual join entry in there that you can edit rather than having to go to a separate screen to edit it. The separate screen thing, I mean, that's almost more like an iPhone interface than a tablet or desktop. Okay, so we know the table metadata, we show them with their column names, and we show the toggles. Now, we don't store the result anywhere yet. It knows it temporarily. It's got it in a state, which is local storage, not stored in the object that corresponds. So the next step with this will be to kind of make this configuration, save that state somewhere that the rest of the tool can get to it. For now, it's just a visual thing. And then the last little bit we did was SQL metadata. We used to call the database SQL metadata, which it had some metadata, but it was mostly not a metadata. It was mostly a database. So we renamed this SQL. This was SQL metadata. Now it's called SQL database. And I have this other thing that's kind of annoying. We say database.database. So I feel like something's not at the right level. We're this law of Demeter violation. We're walking through a structure to get to the thing we care about. That's probably not what we want. It'd be nice to just get there. This is a move towards making this more kind of flat as far as the view is concerned. I think the SQL metadata or the SQL database, it's got some more changes. We used to use this null SQL database or error database. When you were typing things, we could tell you hadn't selected anything or you had an error. Those cases go away now because we just select the database. So again, I think those SQL database instances can simplify. If I can simplify the table metadata stuff and use only that, that'll probably be good too. So we've got some refactoring we can do. I'm kind of stumbling around a bit, I'll admit. This double view model was the active tables model. With this stuff, I'd really like to shake that stuff out and figure out the right way to do things in Swift. All right, so that's it for this week. What I expect to do next week is make this stuff more current, make it state that persists in the same sense that it did when it was down here, and then use that to tie that in so that this configuration gets used by the actual table stuff. So that'll take a little bit of work, but I think part of that work will be cleaning out the old stuff as much as figuring out what the new stuff is. So I will be back next week, 2 to 4:30 Eastern Time or 7 to 9:30 p.m. UTC. And thanks for joining. Bye-bye.